the CEO of a woman-owned small business. So that's an official certification through the federal government, through the Small Business Administration. Our company does two things. We provide consulting services to federal agencies to support the acquisition lifecycle. So that means the 1102 series, if you know what that means, you probably don't. But anybody who is in a government position to buy or issue contracts. But we also do things like help program offices get their packages ready so that contracts and solicitations can be put out on the street for companies to bid. We also provide a lot of institutional support services, which is what I call sort of staff augmentation. And most of that work is at U.S. Agency for International Development and also some at Department of State. The other side of our business does business-to-business consulting, and we actually do help people look at the federal market and decide if and when and how they could enter the market. As part of that, we also have a group that does lobbying, which is really advocacy for helping remove barriers so that people can enter that market. And our primary customers there are around the VA business. So I can't really tell you who they are, but we do a lot of work for our companies to help them better be able to sell to the VA things like N95 masks or services around the testing and things like that. Wide variety. Today, much of our revenue is with USAID and the State Department, and followed by USDA. I have only been in this position since March 15th, and my journey was sort of a long and winding road. So I'm going to share a little bit about that with you, and then talk a little bit more about contracting in general. But the reason I was excited about doing this today is in my last company, we had a very large contract providing military science instructors to the Army ROTC program. And it was there that I really began to understand the daunting task for people going from active military into civilian work world. It never dawned on me that it was so hard to transition the skills and work that you do in the military to something in the civilian world. And so as I thought about that, and I thought about my own journey, I really began to think about it's about connecting the dots. And it's not always a straight line. So just to give you my background, my little story is I came out of college and went into a National Scholars Program for contracting with Air Force Office of Scientific Research. I didn't think I would go that route. I had studied operations research. I thought I would go run a manufacturing plant. But this job sounded kind of interesting. My father was Army, my grandfather was Navy. So I thought, I'll go do this. I'll learn something. And I did that for 3 years. And then I moved to the US Mint as a CO and just fell into a role doing strategic planning. It was quite accidental, but it was my ability to look at a big problem and start to find ways to address that problem that got me noticed. So I did that for a few years. And then I ended up learning a lot about negotiation skills. So as part of that strategic planning, we had to negotiate between the labor unions and the management on how we were going to execute some of the things that we needed to accomplish, including things like producing the Sacagawea dollar coin. So then I got to help bring in lean manufacturing into the mints. That was a huge undertaking. It was not an organization that was used to that kind of entrepreneurship or innovation. And so bringing that in allowed me to sort of understand my skills around process reengineering. I didn't understand the nuances of making a coin, but I understood how to dissect a problem. And again, there's kind of a theme there. And I thought, well, I'll get a master's in organization development. I really love improving process, people, and technology. Then I ended up at Unisys and I built a human capital practice there. That goes back to some HR roots and that kind of thing. But it was really building a business and I had never done that before. And when I went to Unisys, I actually negotiated that I did not want to do business development. I just hated salespeople, just hated them. They'd come talk to me at the Mint and I just would be like, oh God, get out of my office. I can't stand this. But what I learned is that I was really good at it. And not because I acted like the people that I saw come into my office, but because I knew people and I connected with people and I asked what was going on and I asked about their problems. And if I didn't have a solution, I would connect them with someone else. And I would always follow up with what I said I would do. And that got people to trust me more. And people would then pick up the phone and say, hey, I've got this. And I would say, hey, maybe we can help you with that. Or, I can't help you with that, but I've got this person. And so that ended up making me very successful in business development. I ended up bringing in a fair amount of work. Well, then somebody asked me to run some IT programs. And I thought, well, I can't do that. I don't know. I can't spell IT. But what made me successful there was the fact that I couldn't spell IT and I had to collaborate with everybody else to get it done. I had to make sure that I had the hardware people and the software people and the developers with me so that when we looked at a problem, we could actually say, okay, this is the end result. What do we need technically? What do we need change-wise? What do we need hardware-wise? And then how do we bring it all together? And so I grew a practice from 4 million to 14 million in 1 year and to 25 million a year by the end of 2 years. Again, because of the way I looked at things, not because of my background. So then I wanted to get back to my roots. I'd done that, kind of been there, done that. And I thought, well, there's this opportunity. I'm going to go work for a company that does nothing but acquisition support again. But I brought organization development with me. And that's when I really started looking at the life cycle of acquisition in the government. How do we change the processes? Can't change the federal acquisition regulations, and we certainly can't change the defense federal acquisition regulations, but we can change how people perceive it, understand it, and work within it. So for example, one of my mentors said to me, and she knows the FAR way better than I'll ever know it. She'll forget more than I'll ever know. She said, if the FAR doesn't say you can't do it, then you can do it. And when I think about that, I think about how do you use the FAR to help you get things done? And suddenly contracting became my best friend again, because I did know enough about the FAR to be able to use that to my advantage. So I was with this company and we won a contract providing category management services to GSA, General Services Administration, through a program called the Common Acquisition Platform. So the prime company that we went to do this with was a service-disabled veteran-owned small business, and we were a sub. So about 2 months in, the program manager decided that he was going to retire, mostly because the government didn't like him, and they asked that I become the program manager. And that was great. So I moved over to this company and I took over, and we built the category management stuff that OMB and the White House still use today. And what's important about that is our team understood the data around contracting to be able to normalize it and bring it to the forefront and put it into dashboards. What's important to everybody else about that is that that data is what the White House uses and what OMB uses, and is valuable to everybody around how to go to market. So looking at the best in class contracts, looking at the spend under management, understanding what those terms mean can help you as a business really attack your market strategy. After staying in that role for a couple of years, I became the chief operating officer of that company and started looking at what's the next thing for that company. They were 20 million. We wanted to get to 50 million. They were mostly an HR and HR systems company, a lot of HR operational work. In the federal space, I always say federal HR and federal contracting are dinosaurs. And the biggest challenges with them are there aren't people going into those roles anymore. People aren't enticed to go into those roles. And so we've got a lot of people that are once, twice, 3 times retired in industry providing support in those roles. But how do you make it better? How do you improve those services? And so shared services has been around for a long time, probably since early 2000s, but now it's becoming more outsourced shared services. So we looked at going after that work, and we did win a huge contract before I left the Department of Commerce to provide shared services. So then just sort of a happenstance, a mutual friend of mine and the former owner of the company that I work for now introduced us because they were looking for someone to take over from her. And I was really happy where I was. I loved what I did. I loved the company. And I had always said I never wanted to be a CEO. But when I was talking with Julie Sussman, the former owner, and then talking with the new owner, what I realized was that I really could make a difference. I really could do something. And it wasn't that I necessarily didn't want to be a CEO. I didn't want to be like Justin and own everything and own all of the problems and everything. I like having some safety net behind me. I like having that investor group behind me. So I made the jump, and it's been great. I love this company. I love what we do. And we do focus on acquisition. So our biggest challenges today are what you heard, Justin, staff, labor. The market is so tight right now. Again, the acquisition personnel are not, it's not something that people are going into today. When I did it, it was alluring. There was a lot of benefit to going into acquisition. Today, I don't know if people feel that way about it. So we're always looking for the best talent, which means we're competing for them. And that means salaries and things like that, benefits. How do we better compete? But we also have to keep our rate structure low enough that we can compete and win, especially as a small business. Our other big challenges today, and they have been around, are contract protests. So for example, we won a contract at USAID, and one of the companies decided that they did not like the decision, so they filed a protest. Well, we can't start work. Hopefully there's enough money to fund the current contract to provide the support while this protest happens. But now we go through this very long process, which takes up a lot of time, energy, and money to work with GAO and the agency to find out what's going to happen. And in general, if it's filed with GAO, General Accountability Office, then it is 100 days. But someone can file another protest. Someone can file a second protest, which is actually what happened on our Army ROTC contract at my former company. After 2 protests, we finally got the work, but it was quite painful and quite extensive. And in this case, we actually have hired an attorney to be an intervener for us. So what that means is, because the protest was filed, we can't have any access to any information about what's going on behind the scenes. But we can hire an outside attorney to go work with the agency to help them prepare their information for GAO. They cannot tell us anything, but they can ask us questions so that they can help clarify for the government points of interest that would help us in the end. It has to be completely above board, complete integrity. Otherwise it doesn't work, and then you've got other problems. But that is one of the biggest problems that you're going to see in this federal government contracting space today, is the number of protests. The key themes in my journey, and the key themes that I think are important, are: your journey is your own. Know who you are and what's important to you. Own it. Some people think that they should be embarrassed because they think that growing fast and making a lot of money is important. Some people think that status isn't important. We should never be embarrassed about what our underlying agenda is. It is who you are, and if you own it and you're transparent about it, then you will be a lot more successful. And when I think about those connecting the dots, when I think about coming out of the military, I try to look at, okay, if you are successful on the battlefield, what are your skills? But you have problem-solving skills. Sometimes you may have engineering skills. You certainly have leadership skills. You've got to be able to build coalitions. You've got to be able to network.